They say when a wolf fails to shift at the great solstice, the bond doesn't just break, it burns. That once the alpha declares you wolfless, you're supposed to accept the silence, bow your head, and vanish into whatever frozen hell they assign you. But some alphas don't just reject you in private. They make you stand in the center of the high stone hall, in front of every noble bloodline in the kingdom, and declare you broken, incomplete, unworthy of the Iron Paw throne. Mine did, and the pack watched in deafening silence while my soul turned to ice in my chest. Soren Iron Paw didn't just sever our mating bond that night. He stripped me of my title, my home, and every shred of dignity I'd carried as a thorn. He pressed his words into me like claws, null and void, as if I were a contract gone bad, a transaction that failed to deliver. I stood there in my muted red gown, simple, unadorned, bleeding pride, and not a single voice rose in my defense. Not one. Before we go any further, I need to know you're still with me. If this story is hitting you the way it's meant to, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're listening from. Don't lurk, let me know you're here. This story lives because you're listening to it, so speak up. 3 years later, when the frost over that memory had finally stopped cutting me open every night, a blood-sealed summons arrived at the edge of the forbidden tundra. Inside, written in the formal script of the Iron Paw court, an invitation to any surviving blood of noble lineage to return for a final ritual to save the dying Alpha King. Soren was rotting from the inside out, consumed by a shadow curse no healer could name. One last desperate grasp at salvation, one final chance for the kingdom to watch the wolfless girl crawl back in shame, still weak, still broken, still beneath them. They thought exile had finished me. They thought the tundra, where wolfless shifters are sent to freeze and fade, had claimed me like all the others. They never imagined I spent those 3 years in the belly of the coldest place on earth, not dying, but waking something older than their entire bloodline. A primordial force that sleeps in only the rarest of souls. A silver guardian that doesn't answer to alphas, kings, or crowns. Soren wanted the shamed noble he discarded to stumble into his throne room in rags so the court could pity me one final time. Exiled, his new Luna, wanted the broken girl to witness her triumph and crumble at her feet. Instead, they're getting me in the same muted red gown, my spine straighter than their columns of stone, and a power so ancient that when it finally speaks, even kings will have no choice but to kneel. Tonight, I don't just return. I rewrite what strength means in this kingdom. The tundra doesn't kill you quickly. That would be a mercy, and the forbidden tundra has no concept of mercy. It strips you down piece by piece, layer by layer, until there's nothing left but the truth of what you are beneath all the titles and bloodlines and pretty gowns. I learned that truth in the first week. The cold came for my pride first, then my anger, then my grief. It peeled them away like dead skin, and I let it happen because holding on to those things required energy I didn't have. Energy I needed just to keep my heart beating through another night of winds that screamed like dying gods. The other exiles didn't make it past the first month. I found their bodies curled in the ice caves, frozen mid-prayer to alphas who'd already forgotten their names. Wolfless shifters sent here to disappear quietly, to become cautionary tales whispered in the warmth of pack halls. Remember what happens when you fail the solstice. Remember what happens when you're not strong enough. But I was different, though I didn't know it yet. On the 47th night, when my body should have given up, when the frost should have finally claimed me, I heard it. A voice that wasn't a voice. A presence that moved through my bones like ancient starlight finding its way home. Child of the first blood, why do you grieve for a bond that was never yours to carry? I thought I was dying, that the cold had finally reached my brain and started whispering hallucinations to make the end easier. I pressed my back against the ice wall of my cave and laughed, though it came out as a broken rasp. Because I'm broken, I whispered into the darkness. Because I failed. Because I have no wolf. The presence grew warmer. Not the warmth of fire, but something older. The warmth of a sun that existed before this world knew what suns were. You have no wolf because you were never meant to carry one. You were meant to carry me. The temperature in the cave dropped so fast my breath crystallized mid-exhale. But I wasn't cold anymore. I was burning from the inside out, a silver fire that started in my chest and spread through every vein, every nerve, every cell that Soren had declared worthless. I tried to scream, but no sound came. Instead, light poured from my mouth, my eyes, my fingertips. The ice walls around me began to glow, intricate patterns forming in the frost like someone was writing in a language older than speech. Do you know what you are, Vespera Thorn? I shook my head, tears freezing on my cheeks. You are the last daughter of the first Alpha, the bloodline that walked before wolves learned to howl, before packs learned to hunt, before kings learned to kneel. And I am the guardian that has waited 17 generations for you to be born. The light faded slowly, leaving me gasping on the cave floor. But something had changed. The cold didn't hurt anymore. The hunger that had gnawed at me for weeks was gone. I pressed my palm to the ice wall and watched it melt beneath my touch, the water running silver before it froze again. Why now? My voice was steadier than it had been in months. Why not during the solstice? Why let me be humiliated? Because the guardian does not wake for pride or ceremony. It wakes for survival, for necessity, for the moment when the soul is stripped bare and ready to carry the weight of what it was always meant to become. I understood then. The rejection wasn't my failure. It was my initiation. Every moment of shame, every silent face in that crowd, every step into this frozen hell had been preparing me for this, burning away everything that wasn't essential, everything that wasn't true. The voice faded but didn't leave. It settled into my chest like a second heartbeat, steady and patient and impossibly old. I spent the next 2 years learning to survive with it, learning to hunt without a wolf's claws, learning to track using senses that had nothing to do with scent or sound, learning to call the ice and snow to my will, to make the tundra not my prison but my sanctuary. Other exiles came, sent by Soren's court, wolfless shifters with hollow eyes and broken spirits. I found them before the cold could, brought them to my cave, taught them that wolfless didn't mean powerless, that there were other kinds of strength, other ways to be whole. By the 3rd year, I had 12 survivors living in the caves with me, 12 voices that had been silenced by packs who couldn't see past teeth and claws and territorial displays of dominance. We built something in that frozen waste, not a pack, something different, something that didn't require an alpha or a hierarchy or a mating bond to validate its existence. We built a family from the broken pieces they'd thrown away. And when the summons came, sealed in blood and desperation, I knew exactly what it meant. Soren's kingdom was dying. The curse Isolde had woven was finally showing its teeth. And they needed someone strong enough to face it. They needed me. I looked at the 12 faces gathered around the fire that night, survivors who'd learned to thrive in a place designed to kill them, and I made my choice. I'm going back, I said. No one tried to stop me. They'd seen the silver light that sometimes leaked from my eyes when I slept. They'd felt the presence that moved through our caves like a blessing. They knew I was never meant to stay here forever. Will you come back? The youngest, a girl barely 15, asked. I touched her hair gently. I don't know. But if I don't, remember what we learned here. Remember that their definitions don't define you, that their rejections don't diminish you, that you are whole exactly as you are. I left at dawn, wearing the same muted red gown I'd arrived in. It was the only thing I'd kept from my old life, a reminder, a brand, a promise. The tundra had taken everything else, and in return, it had given me something Soren could never understand. It had given me myself. The Iron Paw Kingdom looked smaller than I remembered, or perhaps I had just grown larger in ways that had nothing to do with physical size. I stood at the edge of the Blackwood Forest, 3 days' journey from the palace walls, and watched the sky above the capital. It was wrong. The clouds moved in spirals instead of straight lines, and the color was off, a sickly greenish-gray that pulsed like an infected wound. Shadow rot. I'd heard whispers of it even in the tundra. A curse that ate kingdoms from the inside out, starting with the ruler and spreading through the bloodlines until nothing remained but ash and screaming. The guardian stirred in my chest. He is dying. The king who rejected you is being consumed by his own blindness. Good, I said, though the word tasted like ash. Is it? Is his death what you truly desire? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what I desired anymore. Revenge felt too small for what I'd become. Justice felt too clean. What I wanted was something I didn't have words for yet. I wanted him to see, to understand, to kneel not because I commanded it, but because his soul finally recognized what it had thrown away. The journey to the palace took 2 more days. I passed through villages that had once been vibrant, now hollow-eyed and quiet. The shadow rot wasn't just in the capital. It was spreading, creeping through the kingdom like frost through water. People stared as I walked past. A woman alone on the road, wearing a red gown that should have been destroyed by 3 years in the tundra but somehow looked freshly made. Some recognized the Thorn family features in my face and quickly looked away, remembering what happened to the girl who failed the solstice. Let them look away. They'd be looking soon enough. The palace gates were open when I arrived, a sign of how desperate things had become. Guards who should have stopped me simply watched with dead eyes as I walked through. One of them, a man who'd stood in the great stone hall that night 3 years ago, opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Good. Let the silence choke him the way it choked me. Inside, the palace was rotting. Not metaphorically, actually rotting. The stone walls wept black liquid that smelled like decay. The tapestries hung in shreds. The torches burned with a greenish flame that cast more shadow than light. And everywhere, that pressure, that sense of something massive and hungry pressing down on reality itself, trying to break through. I found Soren in the throne room. He looked like death had already claimed half of him and was savoring the rest. His skin was gray, stretched too tight over bones that seemed to be collapsing inward. Black veins spiderwebbed across his face and hands, pulsing with something that definitely wasn't blood. His eyes, once a sharp amber that commanded entire territories, were filmy and unfocused. But it was the woman beside him that made my teeth clench. Isolde Valkyrie, the new Luna, the suitable mate who could give Soren what I supposedly couldn't. She looked radiant, untouched by the rot consuming everything around her. Her hair fell in perfect waves of midnight black. Her skin glowed with health. Her red lips curved in a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. And her hand rested on Soren's shoulder in a gesture that looked like comfort but felt like possession. "My king," she purred, her voice honey-sweet and poison-sharp. "Another petitioner. Shall I send her away? You need your rest." Soren's eyes struggled to focus on me. For a moment, there was no recognition, just the blank stare of a man too far gone to remember his own name. Then something flickered, a spark of memory. His mouth opened. "Vespera?" My name came out like a question, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing, like I was a ghost that had wandered in from the tundra still wearing my shame. "Hello, Soren." My voice was calm, steady, nothing like the girl who'd stood here 3 years ago with her heart turning to ash. Isolde's smile sharpened. "How dare you address the king so informally? You were stripped of your title. You have no right. I have every right. I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. The temperature in the throne room dropped 10 degrees. Frost began to crawl across the floor from where I stood. I was born with the right. I bled for the right. And I survived the place you sent me to die for the right. Soren tried to stand and failed, his legs buckling. Isolde caught him with a theatrical gasp, her fingers digging into his arms hard enough to leave marks. You see how weak he is? She looked at me with eyes that glittered with malice and something else. Something hungry. The shadow rot is eating him alive. We've called every healer, every mystic, every wise woman in the kingdom. No one can save him. Because no one knows what you did. The words came out before I could stop them, but the guardian was whispering, showing me patterns in the rot, signatures in the darkness that had a very specific source. This isn't a curse that came from outside the kingdom, is it, Isolde? Her smile froze. This is a harvest. You're draining him, feeding on his life force to fuel your own power. And when he's finally gone, when there's nothing left but a corpse on that throne, you'll step in as the grieving widow, the dark queen who ruled through tragedy. That's... Isolde's voice was shrill now, the honey gone. That's absurd. I've been trying to save him. I've sacrificed everything. You've sacrificed him. I took a step forward. The frost spread faster, climbing the walls, reaching for the throne. And the kingdom with him. Soren's eyes were fully focused now, clarity returning through the fog of rot. He looked at Isolde, really looked at her. And for the first time, I saw him see what had been draining him this whole time. Isolde? His voice was barely a whisper. What is she talking about? Isolde's mask shattered, the beautiful face twisted into something feral, something that had never been human to begin with. You were always going to die, Soren. Her voice was different now, layered, multiple voices speaking as one. Weak, blind, ruling by tradition instead of power. I would have made this kingdom magnificent. I would have made it eternal. The shadows in the room began to move, pulling away from the walls, from the corners, from the places where light should have kept them pinned. They coalesced behind Isolde, forming a shape, a beast. Something with too many teeth and not enough eyes and a hunger that felt like the end of everything. The shadow rot had a face now. And it was smiling. I should clarify something. The palace siege didn't start when I arrived. It had been happening for weeks, maybe months. Slowly, methodically. The kind of siege that doesn't announce itself with armies or battering rams, but with the quiet erosion of everything that makes a kingdom function. The rot wasn't just consuming Soren. It was consuming the very concept of order. I saw it in the eyes of the guards who'd let me pass without question, in the servants who moved through hallways like ghosts, no longer bothering to clean the black ichor seeping from the walls, in the nobles who'd gathered in the throne room not out of loyalty but out of a macabre fascination with watching their king die slowly. They wanted to see how the story ended. They wanted to witness the moment the Iron Paw dynasty finally collapsed so they could scavenge the pieces and build their own petty kingdoms from the rubble. Vultures, all of them. I walked through the great stone hall, the same hall where Soren had severed our bond, and not a single person recognized me at first. Why would they? The girl they remembered was broken, small, drowning in a red gown that hung on her like a burial shroud. The girl they remembered had stood silent while her entire world burned, too shocked to even cry. That girl was dead, frozen solid in the tundra and left behind like everything else that was too weak to survive. The woman wearing the red gown now walked like she owned the stones beneath her feet, because in a way I did. Every thorn before me had bled for this kingdom, had given their wolves, their lives, their children to keep the Iron Paw bloodline strong. My ancestors' bones were in the foundation of this palace. They just forgot that when I failed to shift. "Who are you?" a voice called out. "Lord Kalen Mordrake, Soren's commander. The one who'd stood 3 feet from me that night and said nothing while his king destroyed me." He looked older now, harder. The shadow rot was in him too, faint black lines creeping up his neck like fingers reaching for his throat. "Someone who answered the summons," I said, not stopping. "Someone of noble blood, as requested. Or did the invitation specify which nobles were allowed to try to save your dying king?" Kalen's hand went to his sword. Old instinct, as if steel could solve every problem. "State your name and house." I stopped then, turned to face him fully. Let him see my face in the diseased green light of the torches. Let him see the features he'd once known, now sharpened by survival and something else. Something that made his wolf whimper inside his chest, even if he didn't understand why. "Vespera Thorn," I said softly. "Daughter of Marcus Thorn, descendant of the first Alpha. The woman your king declared wolfless and unworthy 3 years ago before sending her to die in the forbidden tundra." The throne room went silent. Every conversation, every whisper, every breath stopped like I'd sucked the air from the hall. Lord Kalen went pale. That's impossible. No one survives the tundra, especially not someone without a wolf." I smiled, and it wasn't kind. "You're right. No one without a wolf survives. Good thing I never needed one." I continued walking toward the throne. Nobles scattered from my path like I was contagious. Maybe I was. Maybe I carried something worse than the shadow rot. Maybe I carried truth. And in a court built on comfortable lies, truth was the most dangerous infection of all. Soren saw me coming this time. Really saw me. He tried to rise from his throne again, and again his body betrayed him. Isolde's hand on his shoulder pressed him back down, her nails digging in, and I saw it clearly now. Saw the black tendrils flowing from her fingers into his skin. Saw how his life force moved up her arm and into her chest where it pulsed like a second heart. She was eating him alive while wearing the face of a devoted mate. "You shouldn't have come back," Isolde said, her voice that layered thing again. The shadow beast behind her was larger now, more defined. Its form shifted between states, solid, liquid, smoke, something that existed in the spaces between things. "There's nothing here for you. No crown, no redemption. Just a dying king, and a kingdom that's about to belong to someone stronger. You think you're strong?" I stopped at the base of the throne platform. This close, the rot stench was overwhelming. This close, I could feel exactly what Isolde had done. The spell wasn't just draining Soren. It was draining everyone connected to the Iron Paw bloodline. Every alpha, every pack member. Slowly converting their life force into raw power that fed the shadow beast, fed her. She wasn't trying to rule the kingdom. She was trying to consume it. Stronger than a wolfless girl who got thrown away like trash, Isolde hissed. Stronger than a king too weak to see what was happening until it was far too late. Stronger than every bloodline in this pathetic kingdom combined. The shadow beast roared, and the sound wasn't sound. It was the absence of sound. A void that swallowed noise and replaced it with screaming silence. The windows shattered. Nobles screamed. Guards drew weapons that suddenly felt useless. Lord Kalen moved in front of Soren instinctively, though what good a sword would do against living darkness was anyone's guess. And Soren, dying Soren with his gray skin and black veins and eyes that had finally started to see clearly, looked at me. "Vespera," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see." "I know." And I did. I could see it in him now. The regret, the understanding that came 3 years too late. The recognition that he'd thrown away something precious because it didn't fit his narrow definition of valuable. But this wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't even about us. This was about a kingdom on the edge of extinction and a woman who'd learned in the frozen wastes that sometimes the only way to save something is to burn away everything that's rotting it from the inside. "Get everyone out," I said to Kalen. "Now, anyone who can still walk, get them out of this hall and as far from the palace as possible." "What are you going to do?" His hand was still on his sword, but his wolf was screaming at him to run, to submit, to recognize that something ancient and terrible was waking up in this hall, and it had nothing to do with Isolde's shadow beast. What I was always meant to do. I looked at Isolde and her monster. "I'm going to show you what real strength looks like." The temperature dropped. Frost spread from my feet in a perfect circle, racing across stone and climbing walls and reaching for the diseased sky visible through the broken windows. And deep in my chest, the silver guardian opened its eyes. The thing about divine power is that it doesn't announce itself the way mortals expect. No trumpets, no declarations, no theatrical displays of might meant to impress an audience. It simply is, and everything else has no choice but to acknowledge that fact. The silver guardian didn't emerge. That's not the right word. It manifested. Reality bent around its existence like light bending around a star, and suddenly there was something in the throne room that had never been there before, and had also somehow always been there, waiting. Isolde's shadow beast lunged first, all teeth and void and hunger given form. It moved fast, faster than anything that size should move, fast enough that Lord Kalen didn't even have time to raise his sword before the thing was on top of me. It never reached me. The guardian's presence expanded, and the shadow beast hit it like a wave hitting a cliff. The impact shook the entire palace. Stone cracked. The throne itself split down the middle. And the shadow beast recoiled, shrieking that soundless scream that made ears bleed and minds fracture. I felt the guardian then, really felt it for the first time since the tundra. Not as a separate entity living in my chest, but as an extension of myself. My will made manifest. My soul given teeth and claws and the kind of power that gods use to shape worlds. My eyes went silver, not metaphorically, actually silver, glowing like molten metal, bright enough that people had to look away or go blind. The temperature didn't just drop. It plummeted to absolute zero. Frost became ice, became something beyond ice. The very concept of cold made real. And behind me, rising from my shadow the way the beast had risen from Isolde's, the guardian took physical form. It was the size of a cathedral, larger, a wolf made of starlight and ice and something older than either. Its fur moved like aurora borealis, shifting through colors that didn't have names in any human language. Its eyes were twin suns, white-hot and ancient, and infinitely patient. And when it breathed, galaxies swirled in the mist. The throne room couldn't contain it. The walls groaned. The ceiling cracked. Reality itself seemed to struggle with accommodating something this vast, this impossible, this fundamentally other. And the pressure. God, the pressure. It wasn't physical. It was spiritual, metaphysical, the weight of eons and bloodlines and divine mandate pressing down on every living thing in the hall. The kind of pressure that makes mortal beings remember they're mortal, that makes wolves remember they're just animals playing at civilization, that makes kings remember they're just men wearing crowns that were always too heavy for them anyway. Lord Kalen dropped to his knees first. He didn't choose to. His body made the decision without consulting his pride. One moment he was standing, sword half raised, the next his knees slammed into stone hard enough to crack it. His head bowed. His wolf inside him rolled over and showed its throat to something it recognized as apex. The other nobles followed, like dominoes, like gravity. One by one, every alpha in the hall went to their knees, their wolves forced into submission by a power that predated their entire species. Even Soren, dying, rotting Soren on his broken throne, found the strength to slide from his seat and kneel. His face was wet, tears or blood or both. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the sound of the Guardian's presence rewriting the fundamental laws of the hall. "Forgive me," he was saying, over and over. "Forgive me. Forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't see. Forgive me." But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at Isolde. She hadn't knelt, couldn't kneel. The shadow beast was wrapped around her like armor, like a second skin, holding her upright through sheer malevolent will. Her eyes were black now, completely black. No whites, no pupils. Just endless void staring out from a human face. "No," she said, and her voice shook the foundations. "No, I've come too far, sacrificed too much. This kingdom is mine. This power is mine. You're just a failed shifter, just a broken girl playing with forces she doesn't understand." The Guardian's eyes focused on her, just looked at her, and I felt Isolde's certainty crack. "You're wrong," I said, my voice layered with the Guardian's now, two voices speaking as one, ancient and young, mortal and divine. "I understand perfectly. You tried to steal power that was never meant for you. You tried to consume a bloodline because you were too weak to build your own. You wore the face of love while committing murder slow enough that no one noticed until it was too late." I stepped forward. The Guardian moved with me, through me, around me. We were separate. We were one. The distinction didn't matter anymore. "But what you don't understand, Isolde, is that stolen power is just borrowed time, and your time is up." The shadow beast attacked again. All of it this time. Everything Isolde had harvested from Soren, from the bloodlines, from months of feeding on the kingdom's life force. It came at us like a tidal wave of darkness, like the end of everything, like entropy given teeth. The Guardian didn't fight it, didn't attack, didn't even move. It simply existed harder. The light from its form intensified. White, blinding, pure, and the shadow beast hit that light and started to burn. Not with fire, with something cleaner. It burned the way lies burn when exposed to truth, the way sickness burns when exposed to health, the way darkness burns when it finally, inevitably, meets something brighter. Isolde screamed, her human voice and the beast's void voice and something else, something that sounded like 1,000 souls crying out at once. The shadow beast was coming apart, unraveling, the stolen life force being purified and returned to its sources. Throughout the kingdom, alphas gasped as strength flooded back into their bodies. The black veins receded, the rot stopped spreading, children stopped crying, elders stopped dying. The very air changed, becoming cleaner, lighter, real again. And in the throne room, Isolde collapsed. The shadow beast dissolved completely, leaving her small and human and mortal on the floor. Her perfect beauty was gone. What remained was something old and twisted and desperate. "Please," she whispered, "please. I just wanted to be powerful. I just wanted to matter." The Guardian looked at her with those ancient eyes, judged her not with anger but with something worse, pity. "You always mattered," I said softly. "You just never believed it. So you tried to steal worth from others instead of building your own." The ice around her feet grew, slowly, gently, until she was encased. Not dead, just held, preserved, a monument to what happens when you confuse power with value. Then the Guardian turned its massive head toward the kneeling king. Toward Soren, who'd caused all of this through his blindness, who'd rejected me for failing to fit his definition of strength, who'd learned his lesson far too late to prevent the catastrophe. The Guardian lowered its head until its eyes were level with his. And Soren, Alpha King Soren Ironpaw, conqueror of territories and ruler of kingdoms, wept like a child before something that finally made him understand how small he'd always been. The Guardian's light faded slowly, pulling back into my chest like a tide returning to the ocean. The massive form dissolved into mist, into starlight, into memory. but its presence remained. In me, around me, a weight and a warmth that would never fully leave. I was still Vespera, but I was also something more now, something that had finally accepted what it was. Isolde remained frozen in her prison of ice, her eyes open but unseeing, alive but trapped in a moment between breaths. The magic holding her wasn't mine alone. The Guardian had woven something into the ice, something that would keep her contained until the kingdom decided what justice looked like for someone who'd tried to consume it whole. I turned to face the kneeling alphas. They were starting to move again, slowly, like people waking from nightmares. Some looked at me with awe, others with fear, a few with something worse, calculation. Already wondering how to use this, how to leverage a guardian for their own political games. Wolves, always thinking like wolves, always looking for the angle, the advantage, the way to come out on top. Rise, I said quietly. The command carried weight it never had before. Every alpha in the hall stood as one, compelled by instinct older than their bloodlines. Lord Kalen was the first to find his voice. He stepped forward, and I noticed his hand was no longer on his sword. He moved like someone approaching something holy, something that could bless or obliterate depending on its mood. Lady Vespera. He used my title, the one Soren had stripped from me 3 years ago, the one he'd never defended when it mattered. We. Words failed him. Good. Words had failed me 3 years ago when I stood in this same hall being unmade and no one had found any to defend me. Let him feel that helplessness. Let him choke on everything he should have said and didn't. But then he did something I didn't expect. He went to one knee again, not because the Guardian forced him, because he chose to. I should have spoken, he said, his voice rough with something that might have been shame. That night, when the king severed your bond, when he declared you wolfless and unworthy, I should have said something, anything. I was his commander, his friend. I had the rank and the right to question his judgment, and I stood there like a coward and watched him destroy you. The other alphas shifted uncomfortably. They'd all been there. They'd all stayed silent. Now one of their own was admitting it, and that admission made them complicit too. Why didn't you? I asked, not angry, just curious. I genuinely wanted to know what calculus ran through their heads that night. What made silence seem like the better option than truth? Because we believed him. Kalen's jaw tightened. Because the solstice has never been wrong. Because in 10,000 years of Iron Paw history, every royal who failed to shift was truly wolfless. Because we trusted tradition over our own eyes. And what did your eyes see? He looked up at me then, and I saw it. The recognition he'd buried 3 years ago because it was too uncomfortable, too complicated, too dangerous to acknowledge. Power, he said simply. Even then, even when you stood there silent in that red gown with your heart breaking, there was power in you, in your stillness. In the way you didn't beg or plead or defend yourself, you just endured. Like you knew something we didn't. Like you were already somewhere beyond our judgment. I wasn't, I admitted. I was just shocked, too hurt to process what was happening, too broken to form words. I paused, but the Guardian was there, watching, waiting, seeing if I was worthy. And when it decided you were, when I stopped trying to be what others wanted me to be and started becoming what I actually was, I looked at the assembled nobles, these alphas who ran packs and territories and thought themselves powerful because they could shift and hunt and howl at the moon. That's the lesson none of you learned. Power isn't performance. It's not teeth or claws or how loud you can roar. It's knowing yourself so completely that nothing external can shake you. A voice from the back, shaky but determined. What do we do now? I turned to see an older alpha, Lord Theron Blackridge. He'd lost his mate to the shadow rot 2 weeks ago. The stolen life force returning hadn't been enough to save those who'd already passed the point of no return. Now, I looked at Isolde's frozen form. Now we purge the rest of her magic. The curse is broken, but there are still shadows in this kingdom. Still pockets of rot where her influence took root. We find them. We cleanse them. We make sure nothing like this ever happens again. And how do we do that? Lord Theron asked. Most of us don't have guardian wolves living in our chests. I smiled, and it was genuine this time. You do it the way I survived the tundra. You do it together. You stop thinking like individual packs competing for scraps and start thinking like a kingdom that shares a common purpose. You build something better than what you had. And who leads us in this new kingdom? Another voice. Lady Maren Stormclaw. She'd always been ambitious, always looking for the opening to climb higher. Everyone looked at me, then at Soren, still on his knees before the broken throne, still crying silent tears of regret and relief, and something that looked like rebirth. That, I said carefully, depends on whether your king has learned anything from nearly dying. Kaelin stood then, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of command. I pledge my sword to the Guardian, not to politics or tradition or bloodline, to the power that saved this kingdom when we were too blind to save ourselves. He looked at me. If you'll have it. I don't want your sword, Kaelin. I met his eyes. I want your wisdom, your willingness to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. Your courage to question kings when they're wrong. Can you give me that instead? He blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly. Yes, I can do that. Good. I looked at the others. That's what I want from all of you. Not loyalty, not worship, not fear. I want you to be better than you were. I want you to see beyond tradition and look at the actual person in front of you. I want you to speak up when you see injustice, instead of staying silent because it's easier. And if we fail? Lady Maren asked. Then you fail, and you learn from it, and you try again. I gestured to Isolde's frozen prison. She failed because she thought power was something you take. You'll succeed if you understand that real power is something you earn by being worthy of it. The throne room was quiet then, not the heavy silence of 3 years ago when I was being destroyed. A different kind of silence, the kind that happens when people are actually thinking instead of just reacting. Kaelin broke it. What about the tundra exiles, the ones you saved? Will you bring them back? I hadn't expected him to remember that detail from my earlier words. Yes, they're family now. They've earned their place here more than most of you. Then I'll prepare quarters for them. He paused. And I'll apologize to every single one for the kingdom that sent them there to die. That surprised me again. Kaelin Mordrake, learning humility. Wonders never ceased. There's one more thing. Lord Theron stepped forward. The shadow magic. There are texts, old books in the royal library about dark sorcery. We should burn them. Make sure no one can ever use them again. No. My voice was sharp. We study them. We understand them. You don't prevent darkness by pretending it doesn't exist. You prevent it by teaching people to recognize it when it appears. I looked at Isolde. She succeeded because no one knew what to look for, because this kingdom decided certain knowledge was too dangerous to keep. That won't happen again. Murmurs of agreement. These alphas were actually listening, actually learning. Maybe there was hope for this kingdom after all. Now get to work, I said. There's a kingdom to rebuild. Start by checking on your packs. Make sure the returned life force reached everyone. Find the places where rot is still festering. Help each other, I smiled slightly. And maybe, just maybe, try trusting each other instead of constantly competing. They began to file out, some quickly, others lingering as if wanting to say more but not knowing how. Kaelin was the last to leave, and he paused at the door. Thank you, he said, for coming back, for not letting us all die for our blindness. I didn't do it for you, I replied honestly. I did it because it was right, because this kingdom, for all its flaws, is still worth saving. Because the people who live here deserve better than to die for their leader's mistakes. He nodded, understanding, and left, leaving me alone in the throne room with a broken king, a frozen sorceress, and a guardian that purred contentedly in my chest like a satisfied cat. Soren hadn't moved from his knees. His tears had stopped, but his face was still wet, still marked by the journey from arrogance to humility. The black veins were fading from his skin, the life force returning, but he'd never be the same king he was before Isolde nearly killed him. Good. That king had been blind. I approached him slowly, my footsteps echoing in the empty hall. The red gown swished around my ankles, still somehow pristine despite everything. Maybe the guardian kept it clean. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it just refused to tear because the story wasn't finished yet. Soren, I said softly. Look at me. He raised his head, and his eyes were different, clearer. The amber color was returning, but something essential had changed. He'd seen death. He'd seen divinity. He'd seen exactly how fragile his power really was. I'm so sorry, his voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Vespera. I destroyed you because you didn't fit into the box I'd built in my mind. Because I was too proud to question tradition, too blind to see what was right in front of me. I know. I knelt too, meeting him at eye level. I know you're sorry, Soren. I can see it in you. The regret, the shame, the wish that you could go back and make different choices. Can you forgive me? He reached for my hand, then stopped, uncertain if he had the right. I took his hand. Let him feel the warmth of my skin. Let him understand that I was real, present, choosing this moment of grace. Yes, I said, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it yet, but because holding on to anger would poison me the way Isolde's curse poisoned you. Because forgiveness isn't about you earning it. It's about me choosing freedom. He closed his eyes, fresh tears spilling. Thank you. Thank you. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. Soren, I squeezed his hand gently. Listen to me. You can't make it right. You can never undo what you did. That moment is gone. That girl you rejected is gone. I'm not her anymore. His face fell. Then what? You can be better going forward. You can learn. You can lead differently. You can build a kingdom where what happened to me never happens to anyone else. I paused. But you can't do it alone anymore. I know. I know I need advisors. No. I mean, you can't do it as the kind of king you were. That man needs to die, Soren. The alpha who thought his word was law. Who thought tradition was more important than truth. Who thought a wolf's strength was the only strength that mattered. That king is finished. He stared at me, understanding dawning. You want me to abdicate. I want you to evolve. I stood, pulling him to his feet. I want you to rule, yes, but differently, with humility, with advisors who can challenge you, with laws that protect the weak instead of just empowering the strong. And you? His voice was hesitant, hopeful. Will you, the bond? It was severed, but maybe with the guardian, maybe we could. No, the word was firm but not cruel. That part of our story is over, Soren. We're not mates. We never really were. What we had was political convenience dressed up as destiny. But I love you. He said it like the words hurt, like admitting it cost him something vital. I know I didn't then. I know I was too blind to see what I had. But now, after everything, I understand what I lost. I love you, Vespera. I love your strength, your resilience, you love what I represent. I cupped his face gently. You love the power I carry, the guardian, the idea of having someone that strong by your side. but you don't love me. You don't know me well enough to love me. Then let me learn. Let me try. Let me prove. Soren, I dropped my hand. I don't want to be a traditional mate. I don't want to stand beside a throne and smile while you rule. I don't want to bear heirs and attend ceremonies and play the role of the supportive partner. That's not who I am anymore. Then what do you want? I looked at the broken throne, at the shattered windows, at the cracks in the stone where divine power had reshaped reality. I want to protect this kingdom. I want to teach others what I learned in the tundra. I want to find the outcasts and the broken and the wolfless and show them they're not lesser. They're just different. And different can be powerful if you give it a chance to grow. I turned back to him. I want to establish a new law, a new way of measuring worth. Tell me. He was listening now, really listening, the way he should have 3 years ago. Tell me what you need. I need you to decree that strength is measured by the soul's light, not the wolf's teeth, that a shifter who fails the solstice isn't automatically worthless, that there are other kinds of power, other ways to serve the kingdom, other paths to greatness. I stepped closer. I need you to make it law that no one can ever be exiled for being different, that the tundra becomes a sanctuary instead of a death sentence, that we build a kingdom that values character over conformity. Soren was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened, and I saw it. The king he could become. The leader who'd learned from his mistakes and grown beyond them. It will be done, he said. I'll draft the decree tonight, present it to the council tomorrow, make it law before the week is out. And you'll enforce it, even when it's unpopular? Even when traditional alphas push back and call you weak? Especially then. His voice was steel now. Real strength, not the performance of it, because I've seen what real weakness looks like. It looks like me 3 years ago, too proud to admit I was wrong, too blind to see truth, too cowardly to stand against tradition even when tradition demanded something monstrous. I smiled. Good. Then maybe you'll actually become the king this kingdom deserves. With your help, with my presence, not as your mate, not as your queen, but as the guardian, as someone who will hold you accountable, who will speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, who will challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. He nodded slowly. I can live with that. You'll have to. I turned toward the broken windows, toward the kingdom beyond. Because I'm not asking permission, Soren. I'm telling you how this is going to be. You can accept it or abdicate. Those are your options. A pause. Then, incredibly, he laughed. It was small and broken but genuine. What's funny? I asked. 3 years ago you stood silent while I destroyed you. Now you're giving me ultimatums. It's perfect. It's exactly what I deserve. No. I looked back at him. It's what you need. There's a difference. Will you heal me? The rest of the rot. The guardian could. Yes. I placed my hand over his heart, felt the damaged tissue, the poison still lingering in his veins. But understand something, Soren. I'm healing your body, your soul. That's work only you can do. That's going to take time and effort and daily choices to be better than you were. I can't do that for you. I understand. Silver light flowed from my palm into his chest. Warm, pure. The opposite of Isolde's darkness. The rot burned away cleanly, leaving healthy tissue behind. His color returned. His strength flooded back. In moments, he was whole again. Physically, at least. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me. I withdrew my hand. Thank the Guardian for thinking this kingdom was worth saving. Thank your commanders for switching sides when it mattered. Thank yourself for finally learning humility. I headed for the door, and then get to work earning the second chance you've been given. Vespera, he called after me. Where are you going? I paused at the threshold. To get my family, to bring the tundra exiles home, to start building something better than what was. I looked back one last time. And then I'm going to teach this kingdom a lesson it should have learned generations ago. What lesson? I smiled, and it was fierce and proud and completely unafraid. That true power doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need crowns or thrones or ceremonies. It lives quietly in the hearts of those who remain noble even when the world strips them of everything. It survives. It endures. And when the moment comes, when it's truly needed, it rises. I walked out of the throne room, leaving the king to contemplate his rebuilt kingdom and his rebuilt self. The guardian purred in my chest, satisfied. We had work to do. If you made it this far, you felt something. Don't let that feeling die in silence. Right now, yes. Right now, hit that follow button. Drop a comment telling me what part hit hardest, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. This isn't a request. This is a challenge. Prove you're not just a passive listener. Prove you're part of this story. Drop your comment. Share this. Let's build something bigger than just words on a screen. Please do it now. Moral lesson. True power is not a loud display for the world to see. It is the quiet strength of character and the resilience to remain noble even when you are stripped of everything.